Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here today. I really wanted to focus just on the streets and give you a lot of information of what is going on, why they look the way they do, for me to explain the scope of the road fixes that we need, and then to get public input and feedback. We do not have a plan. We need to develop a plan, and I'm going to use your feedback and your questions from these town hall meetings to help us develop our plan. But I think what you will see tonight is I really want to explain to you what the problem is, what we have done about it since I've been mayor, what is needed to improve street maintenance and repair, revenue options, and then we need to talk about what the next steps will be. So I really want to explain what the problem is, and I think after I explain things and go through a few things, especially the funding tonight, you'll get a better idea of what is going on now and what has gone on. So we will follow along tonight with a PowerPoint so you can see it better, kind of what I'm talking about. And again, if you take notes or whatever, we will answer your questions. The one thing I do want to make sure, though, that I let you know, we are focusing on the broad problem that we have of our street surfaces in Omaha. If you have a specific pothole or a specific street in front of your house that you want to talk about, this is really not the forum, but we are happy to take that information tonight, and we will answer your questions later with all the staff that are here. We'll get that specific question you have, say, about your street, but tonight we really got to look at the broad problem that we're having here and not focus on individual people's neighborhoods and things like that. One of the things I want to start out with, just to give you a brief overview, is when I became mayor, I identified 4 goals, and they will remain my goals the entire time that I am mayor. Number 1 is public safety. Number 2 is managing the city budget. Number 3 is economic growth and job development. And number 4 is improving the taxpayer experience. And I'm going to go through each one of those real quickly because improving the taxpayer experience is where I'm going to put the roads and the conditions of our roads because it affects all of us. So to start out with public safety, my number 1 priority and responsibility as mayor of this city is to keep the citizens safe. Many people think that's just fire and police. When I talk about public safety, it has a lot to do with fire and police, but keeping people safe also means keeping your streets in good condition, getting your trash picked up, getting the street lights, making sure that they are working and the signals are working, make sure our codes are enforced. So a lot has to do with public safety. But just talking about police here, we have increased our number of officers from 804 that were budgeted when I became mayor, and we were down in the 700s of the number of officers we actually had, to this year we are up to 902 officers. We're adding a 5th police precinct. We've expanded our gang unit. We've done a lot of work with our police department, but you expect results. And I put this slide up here to show you we have seen very dramatic results with what we have done. And we use 7 indexes to evaluate crime. All 7 indexes are down. The one that we are particularly want you to look at is our homicides. It is the lowest rate that we've had in about 25 years. Right now, this year so far, we have had 9 homicides. Last year, for the entire year, 22. To put that in some sort of perspective, in 2015, we had 50. So that is a tremendous decrease in the number of homicides we have and all of the other crime indexes we have, including robbery, assault, theft, etc. So we've really seen results. The second slide, managing the city budget. When I became mayor, the city budget was in quite a bit of trouble. I became mayor in 2013. That 2013 budget was predicted to be short by about $13 million by the end of the year. The 2014 budget was predicted to be $20 million short. So we had a lot of work to do to manage the budget and your taxpayer dollars much more efficiently, and yet try to improve on city services. And a lot of people say, well, you couldn't do that, you can't do that. And I think that we've proven we have. We have reduced the tax levy twice since I have been mayor. And that was really important for us to do that. And all of the city departments, we try to manage month by month to make sure that they stay on budget or within their budget. Every year since I have been mayor, at the end of the year, we have had a budget surplus. And that isn't easy, but it's very, very careful budget managing. And we are very fiscally sound right now with our budget in the city of Omaha. The next one, job growth and economic development. Omaha has an unemployment rate right now of 2.9%. The average in the country is 3.6, so we're doing very, very good with that. One of the measures that I use to evaluate growth is the number of building permits that we issue. And since 2013, we have issued 283,000 building permits for a value of $4.9 billion. So there is a lot going on in the city of Omaha. There's a lot of investment. There's a lot of growth, and economic development is just thriving right now. So those first three goals that I had, we are doing very, very well with, and I'm very pleased with what we have achieved so far. The fourth one, improving the taxpayer experience. We have made some improvements. One of the things we've done, we redesigned our websites, the City of Omaha websites. We now have cityofomaha.org, we have keepomahamoving.com, we have waistline.org. All of those are to give you information and to keep you informed, and we made it much easier to use. We've expanded our use of social media. We use Facebook, we use Twitter, we use Instagram, we use all the social media that we can to give you accurate, current information on a daily basis. We've added some options for the mayor's hotline. Now you don't have to just call in, but we have a new, it's an app, and it's omahahotline.com that you can email your questions and your concerns in. We have put the city budget online, we've put the city capital improvement plan online, and we've also put the city checkbook online. So we try to be as transparent as we possibly can. We also have a Park Omaha map or app now that you can put money in your meter by using the app. So we try to be as customer friendly as we can. The one area that I am not happy with the way we are is roads, and roads is part of the customer experience. We have prioritized the roads in our road resurfacing and repair in our budget. We have historic amounts of dollars in our budget right now for road resurfacing. Since I have been mayor, that's 2013 to the present, we have resurfaced 738 lane miles in Omaha of road. That's the distance between Omaha and Waco, Texas. So you can see that on that map there. But we have 5,000 lane miles in Omaha. And so we have prioritized it. We have more money than we have in the past, but we still have the 5,000 lane miles of road. And right now what we have tried to do is try to put as much money as we can into the budget for our roads, but the problem is we're never going to catch up with our current amount of revenue that we have. And that's one of the things I want to explain to you very carefully tonight. We have worked with our finance department, our public works department since I have been mayor, and now we decided that we were going to do a deep dive. And what we have spent about the past year on is we have been working with a lot of outside experts to help us evaluate our streets, try to help us determine what we are spending, what we need to be spending, and what we need to do to fix the problem. And so that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. Our objectives for the town hall, there we go, will be to identify the problem, and that's road maintenance, repair, and rehabilitation is what we're talking about tonight. What we've done about it since 2013, what is needed to improve road maintenance and repair. We want to review revenue needs and options, and then talk about next steps. So that's when we'll open it up. So let's talk about the problem. Our existing roads, as I said before, they're aging. Every year they get a year older. They have been underfunded for literally 50 years. The potholes that we have seen, we see every year. We repair our potholes 12 months out of the year every year. But the potholes that we saw this spring, they're a symptom. They're not the issue, and they're a result of an aging infrastructure, and we realize that. Omaha is not alone. This is happening all over the nation, aging infrastructure. And this past winter, with the winter that we had, with February being, I don't know how many snowfalls we had in February, but we had many. In fact, we were plowing snow all of February. We usually start filling potholes in February, and I don't think we filled a pothole in February this year. If we did, it was just a few. And so that winter alone, all through the Midwest, almost every Midwest city, from Kansas City to Des Moines, up in Minneapolis, they all had a major pothole problem this year because our infrastructure is aging. We need to meet the fundamental needs of the citizens to get them and businesses from their home to work, to point A to point B, and we need to do it efficiently. And we do have more needs than we have money. At the current rate, as I said before, we will not catch up with what we need to do. And we've tried to do that. That's the one thing I've tried to do in the last 6 years, is put more and more money into road repair and resurfacing, and yet try to keep the taxes low. And like I said, we have reduced our taxes. But we have come to the point to realize that unless we do something different, we're never going to catch up. We have also a restriction on the funds that can be spent on actual maintenance, which is fixing potholes. Transportation bond funds that we fund major road projects, and those are in our capital improvement plan. They're transportation bonds that were passed by a vote of the people. Those cannot be spent on road maintenance. Another thing, lease purchase bonds. People ask me this all the time. Well, you're spending all that money downtown on that park downtown. Why don't you use that money for potholes and street maintenance? Well, as you know, the park downtown is $250 million of private money, $50 million of city money. I do think that any investor would say you put 50 in and you get 250 back is a pretty good investment. But those lease purchase bonds that we are using, the 50 million for the parks downtown, and that's 90 acres of city-owned park, cannot be used on potholes. They cannot be used on street maintenance. They're very restricted of what they can be used for. So that money we are using, that 50 million, cannot be used on road maintenance. So I wanted to make sure we made that clear. Some definitions and examples. I wanted to talk about reconstruction and capital improvement, things that we are doing, and give you an example of it. Some of the things that we do with our roads to increase a street network capacity, adding lanes and increasing strength. A couple of examples of that are 156th Street from Pepperwood to Corby, 168th Street from Dodge to Maple, and 42nd and Q Street intersection. Those are examples of increasing capacity. Another thing that we do is replace or rehabilitate pavement that it's reached the end of its useful life. A couple examples of that are Crown Point, that's 72nd to Blair High, and 11th and Jones, that's the brick streets downtown. So that is replacing and rehabilitating. To enhance safety and functionality of the streets is another thing that we concentrate on. An example of that, 132nd and West Center. If you've driven down that, it's being completely reconstructed right now. That intersection, that was a safety project that we're doing. It's 90% funded by the federal government, 10% local match. That should be done by the end of the year, but that is a safety issue there. 72nd and Maple is another example of safety projects and increasing the functionality. And then also to facilitate redevelopment and economic development via expansion of our road network. There's a lot of developments, like I said, that are going on in Omaha. And we try to help the developers as much as we can to to help them with their redevelopment. An example of this is with the ConAgra development. We are helping them with Harney Street from 8th to 10th Street. And another example in the Millworks Common development, which is just north of the ballpark, we are actually adding a street to help that development out. So those are just some examples about reconstruction and capital improvements over a road. This shows that we really have to maintain a balance though. What we are really talking about tonight is the maintenance budget, the road maintenance. The construction and capital that I just gave you a lot of examples are, this is in our capital improvement plan. We have every year, right now in 2019, not every year, in 2019, we are spending about $41 million on the maintenance budget. For the capital improvement plan, there is about $66 million in 2019 for major road projects. And those have to be balanced out. And with the whole capital improvement plan, which is a 6-year plan, we actually have about $320 million in that capital improvement plan. So we have the major road projects funded in the capital improvement plan, but what we're talking about now is the street maintenance, the potholes, the resurfacing. That's what we're focusing on tonight. With that capital improvement plan, like I said, it's a 6-year plan. Every year we add on a new year. So for the 2020 budget, we'll add on 2025. And that's where we have 5 kinds of bonds in that capital improvement plan. We have street bonds, we have sewer bonds, we have public safety bonds, we have public facility bonds, and we have park bonds. We pass a bond issue about every 4 years. You all vote on it to improve it. We put it in the capital improvement plan, and it is just that. It's a plan. It changes year after year. Sometimes we have other priorities that come up. We do make amendments to the capital improvement plan as year by year when the council approves it. It's important to know that the only year in the capital improvement plan that is fully funded is the year that we are in. So for instance, right now, the only one that is fully funded in there is 2019. The rest of it is a plan, and it can change and it can be amended as priorities change and things change. We also have federal funding in the capital improvement plan. Current revenue sources, and this is one that I get asked a lot, and I think this is really interesting and it's important to point out, because people ask me all the time, well, I pay all these taxes, what do you do with my tax dollars? And I think this is a way to explain it. This is our current revenue sources that we have to fund our roads. Number one is federal. We get federal money, and that's in the CIP. State, we get the state gas tax. When you use gasoline, there's a tax on it. It's called the state gas tax, or it's street and highway funds. We get right now in 2019 about $46 million from the state for the state gas tax. Locally, we have the wheel tax. We get around $23.5 million from the wheel tax every year. And then we have the CIP. It's important to know that the funding sources that are in the CIP, again, we can't use those for things like maintenance issues. So it's just a balance of where those dollars are and what the bonds could be used for, what the state gas tax could be used for, and what the local funding can be used for. And I think you'll understand. So this is the state gas tax formula. And if you don't think that these are not difficult to figure out and to follow, well, because people will say a lot of times, well, where does the money go and where does it come from? And when I buy gasoline, there's this tax, so who gets it? This is the formula that the state uses for the transportation financing. So I just showed it to you so you could see how difficult and complicated this is with the money we get from the state. A lot of the money, in fact, the majority of money that comes from the gas tax comes from the city of Omaha, but the city of Omaha doesn't get all of that money. It goes out to the whole state. Another question, as I say, I get a lot of times, and I just said it a minute ago, I pay taxes, where do my taxes go? How come you don't have enough money to repave all the roads in Omaha? And I think this is a good slide that shows you, for your property tax that you pay, the first part here, it's hard to see, 61% of your property tax you pay goes to the schools. The city of Omaha is on the end. 21.3% goes to the city of Omaha. 12.5% goes to Douglas County. And that other little sliver there of about 4.5% is the NRD, it's Metro Transit, it's all the other taxing authorities. So with your tax bill, only 21% goes to the city of Omaha. With that 21%, you get the fire department, the police department, all your libraries, you get the parks department, you get public works department, you get your street resurfacing, you get snow and ice removal, you get trash pickup. All of that is funded with 21% of your total tax bill. So this is where your property taxes go. An example here of how much you would pay if you had a $200,000 home. This is where your tax dollars go. So $2,700 goes to the schools. If you look at the bottom, $958 would go to the city of Omaha. And that's what we use to fund all of those things that I was talking about. You could see how it's spread out. The history of the levy in Omaha, I wanted to put that up there so you will see it. From 2002 to 2009, that's when Fahey was mayor, it remained flat. In 2010 and 11, there were big jumps. That was during the Suttle administration. One year it went up 9.6%, another year 4.9%. So it had some big increases in 10 and 11. I was mayor in 2013. We've had 2 levy reductions. We had 2% levy reductions. So you can see how high it used to be, but we are trying to keep our levy, the city's portion, down. Now, a lot of people will say that doesn't make sense because my taxes have gone up. If your taxes have gone up, it's mainly because of one of two things. Your valuation of your property went up. That's determined by the Douglas County assessor, or one of these other taxing entities has raised the levy, like your school districts. I know quite a few of the school districts have raised their levies with voter-approved bond issues. So the taxpayers approved them, and it turns around and raises your levy. But the city of Omaha, we've lowered it, and we've tried to keep it down. And so I have been trying to add more and more and more to road repair and maintenance with keeping this lower levy that we have. Here is and this is just another graph of what we have been adding to the budget since, well, actually, we started out when I was on the city council. In 2010, we had $2.8 million in our budget for road resurfacing for that year. $2.8 million for 5,000 lane miles of road. If you look at year after year, you could see that we have added more and more to the budget every year. In 2019, we have $12.5 million is what we have for road resurfacing budget. So we have continued to try to add more money every year. However, here's the problem. This year, we spent $13.25 million since January 1st on pothole repair. We have used about 9,437 tons of asphalt, and that is the equivalent of about 67,000 potholes that we have filled, and we actually didn't even start filling them till around the 1st of March. Now that's really significant because that is a Band-Aid solution. People say to me all the time, that's just a Band-Aid solution, you're filling potholes with asphalt. We have never argued with that. It certainly is. But what is our choice? If we have a street full of potholes and holes, we have to do something so that you are safer driving until we have the funding to get the roads permanently resurfaced or reconstructed. So the only immediate thing that we could do would be to repair the potholes with asphalt. But we just keep on chasing our tails, because if we have another winter like we had last year, this year, I can guarantee you the majority of those potholes will pop out again. And then we'll be doing this all over again. So if we had a long-range, sustainable road pavement maintenance program, we will drastically cut down on this cost of pothole repair that we do every year. And this is the key. This is where we're getting to. So a long-term sustainable maintenance and rehabilitation plan will reduce the annual repair cost. Snow and ice removal also comes out of this funding that I just talked to you about. The wheel tax, the state gas tax, snow and ice removal also comes out of there. So snow and ice removal, we budgeted for 2019, $8.3 million. We have already spent $7.5 million. And that was basically January, February, and March. And it has to go to the end of the year. So you can see how the money goes very, very quickly when you have a winter like we've had this last year. Our challenge, once again, we have 5,000 lane miles of road in Omaha. This includes approximately 350 lane miles of unimproved streets. Now this is what's important here, this slide right here, because the experts say, and the recommended standards say, we should be spending about $75 million annually for street maintenance and rehab. We are spending $41 million. With all of those revenues that I told you about and the expenses that we have, we are spending about $41 million on street maintenance. That's pothole repair, resurfacing, panel replacement, and crack sealing. We pay for that with the dollars that I've showed you. We get the federal dollars, the state gas tax, and the wheel tax. And this is what we spend on the resurfacing part. We should be spending $75 million. So there is a $34 million gap of what we should be spending every year on annual maintenance and rehabilitation. And what that is to achieve the recommended standard that all our experts tell us about, is we should be resurfacing about 250 lane miles of road annually. Right now we're resurfacing 125 with the current funds that we have. And if we would be able to resurface 250 lane miles a year, Omaha, over the course of 20 years, will have resurfaced every one of the roads. So we would never get back into the situation that we are in now, that the roads deteriorate beyond their replaceable or their repairable life. So if we were, I'll repeat that, if we were resurfacing 250 lane miles a year, that would mean once every 20 years, and that is the average lifespan of our roads, then we would be touching them once every 20 years. And then we would come back and do it again, and we would do it again. And that is what we're talking about as a long-range, sustainable pavement maintenance plan. We won't let it get to the deteriorating condition that they are in right now. But again, that is because that is something that would require more money to do that. Some of our streets, that's just an average too. We have some asphalt streets in Omaha that are 40 years old. We have some concrete streets that are 100 years old. But the average is 20 years. And if we were able to go back and address those streets once every 20 years, then we would not be in this predicament that we are in today. The unimproved streets, I've mentioned those. We have about 320 lane miles in the city of Omaha of unimproved streets. Most of those were built decades and decades ago. You know, we can't rewrite history. It is what it is. A lot of developers back in those times, there's areas like in the West Side area, for example, up in North Omaha, that had some asphalt streets that weren't built to current standards at all. They have deteriorated. The cost to replace all those and update those to current standards is $325 million. And we have created a new cost share policy with that. We did it about a year ago. In the past, in the city of Omaha, and it's still this way in Douglas County, if you lived on one of those streets with an unimproved road and you wanted it improved to today's standards, to a concrete road, you would pay for all of it. That's just how it's always been. That's how it still is in Douglas County. We created a new policy that said if you wanted to improve your street to a concrete road in the future, you could go through the process. The SID means a street improvement district. RMD means road maintenance district. We would help you with it. We would engineer. If you want it concrete, we would now pay half. If you want it asphalt, we would pay 25% of it. But that is much more than that's ever been done in the city of Omaha. But in Douglas County, if you live in Douglas County, it's still that way. You would pay 100%. Another thing I did want to mention, our annexation policy. That is brought up a lot to me, saying, why do you keep on annexing if you can't take care of the roads that you have now? And I will say we have goals with our annexation. They have to be able to provide police and fire. They must be revenue positive for the city because we assume their debt and their assets, and we must eliminate islands. I will tell you our annexation policy is very, very strategic. We evaluate all of the SIDs. We want to make sure it benefits the city and it's revenue positive, and we know everything about that area before we annex it. Today the City Council approved this year's annexation plans. There was 4 SIDs. We know the condition of the roads, we know the lane miles of roads, we know the acres of park, we know everything about that area. And we also, in our annexation package, we make sure that we put in all the cost of city services over a 10-year period. And we even increase those costs of city services by about 3% a year. And if it's not revenue positive for the city, we will not annex those that do that package. So it's very strategic, and the City Council just approved today this year. So I wanted to make sure you understood the annexation policy. This year, for example, our whole annexation policy had 14 lane miles of road in it. So it's not adding a lot more to our liability, but what annexation does, it adds a lot more to our assets. Because we do then assume the sales tax, the property taxes, the occupation taxes, and our annexation plans have been so positive for the city. This is the reason that we've been able to do a lot of the things we were doing. This is the reason we're able to add more police, and the reason we're able to do a lot more roads than we ever have before, because that annexation plan broadens our tax base and it's beneficial to the entire city. So how do we fix it? That's the big question here. With the current revenue streams, like I said, we can't catch up. We are making it a priority. We have historic amounts of funding in our budget now, but we cannot catch up because we're not doing that amount that I talked about. We're only resurfacing with the current revenue about 125 lane miles a year. We need to be doing about 250. We need to be spending $75 million a year. We're spending $41 million a year. So that is the problem that we have to talk about. I will tell you this because people ask the difference between asphalt and concrete. Why do you keep on using asphalt? Don't use asphalt at all anymore. Just use concrete. The reason is, number one, there's a lot of housing areas developments, and I'll give West Side as another example again, that they've always been asphalt. They've never been anything but asphalt. They like the asphalt. They just want the asphalt in good condition. The difference, 1 lane mile of asphalt cost about $150,000. 1 lane mile of concrete, $1.5 million. The concrete costs 10 times more than the asphalt. So that's why if there are neighborhoods that still want asphalt and just want to get their asphalt in good shape again, we're willing to talk to them about it. But current city standards are concrete with storm drains, sewers, sidewalks, etc. A good example, I'm going to give you an example. One road I drive on 2 times a week is 168th Street south of Pacific. Oh my, all the way down to Harrison. That stretch from Pacific to Center, and then from Center down to Q Street, those are in really bad shape, and it's a narrow little 2-lane road. That is going to be widened. It's going to have medians. It's going to have storm drains. It's going to have curbs and sidewalks. So that is a major reconstruction of that road, and we're starting on that next year. Okay, so how do we close that gap? And I wanted to make sure I explain where we came up with that $75 million of what we should be spending. The experts put a value on the surfaces of our roads, and that is about $1.5 million. They say we should be spending 5% of that every year for street maintenance. That's where we get the $75 million. So we should be spending $75 million, we're spending $41, there's a $3.4 million gap. So here's some thoughts, and again, this is not a plan yet. And I am certainly one that doesn't advocate anybody's taxes going up because we've lowered our levy twice. And that's nothing that I want to do, but I want to lay this out and get your opinion of this. Because number one, whatever we do, if we do something that brings in more revenue, I want it to be voter approved. I don't want it to be my decision or the city council's decision, but I want it to be your decision. And so here's a couple ways we could get more revenue in, and I just want to explain them to you. And then I really I want to open it up too for some of your input. The one that I think makes the most sense, if people are willing to discuss it or want to do it, would be a bond issue. That does require a vote of the people, so it would be voter approved. And I gave you 3 different bond issues to give you an example. $75 million, $150, or $200 million bond issue. Look at the $200 million. I said we have a $34 million a year gap. If we passed a $200 million bond issue, they're paid off over 20 years, that would bring in $40 million more annually. That one would close the gap and leave more money for other road projects. If you had a $200,000 home, what that would mean to help pay the debt is you would pay about $71 more every year. That's what that would mean for a $200 million bond issue. A $150 bond issue, it would bring in $30 million annually. That's a little bit lower than we need. And it would cost you about $53 a year more every year, $53 to close that gap. A $75 million bond issue would bring in $15 million more annually. It's half of what we need, but it would cost the average homeowner $27 a year. Another thing here is, I said the potential funding sources bond issue requires a vote of the people. A couple other options I just wanted to lay out, but to give you some good examples, is that there is that wheel tax. And I wanted to bring up the wheel tax because people say all the time that wheel tax was meant to be temporary. I hear that all the time. Why do you still have that wheel tax? It was meant to be temporary. And I will tell you, it was never meant to be temporary. The wheel tax was first passed in 1917. That's over 100 years ago. It was $1 a year at that time. As the years went on and different council members and different mayors, they have increased it to where it is today. To the basic wheel tax is $50 a year if you have a car. One car, $50 a year. Last time it was adjusted was in 2011. It was $35 then, they upped it to $50. That wheel tax brings in about $23 million a year. Every penny of it has to be used on roads or road-related expenses. It's not used on anything else. But remember, roads and road-related expenses means resurfacing, potholes, snow removal, ice removal, pavement markers, traffic signals. There's a lot that goes into that we have to pay for every year that these dollars are used for. But to give you an example, if we were to increase the wheel tax to what Lincoln has, and Lincoln's wheel tax is $74 a year for a car, it would bring us in about 11 million more a year. Now that's $11 million more, but that's not going to close that gap. It also is something that the city council could do without a vote of the people. So that's not an extra funding source that I support. Another thing that is really complicated, but Lincoln did this too because they just raised their sales tax a quarter cent to go and to be used on their roads. Ours is a little more complicated. We have our state sales tax is 5.5%. The city's local option is 1.5%. By state law, only the city of Omaha, because we're the only city of the metropolitan class, we can't raise our local option any more than 1.5%. That's what state law says. So if we wanted to raise our sales tax, we would first have to go get state law passed in Lincoln. Then if they would pass it in Lincoln, we would have to take it to a vote of the people. So there's a lot of loops that we would have to go through before we would even consider what Lincoln did with their sales tax. Now here's something else to remember with the sales tax. Remember that old restaurant tax? 2.5% passed in 2010. The restaurant tax ordinance, or the law, says that this will stay in place and it will only sunset if the sales tax is increased. It will automatically sunset if the sales tax is increased. So that means a half cent on the sales tax, the bottom one, it could bring in about $55 million a year. However, the restaurant tax would go away, and the first 33 million of that would have to go replace that hole that the restaurant tax has in the general fund budget. So that doesn't leave you with a lot. So that's complicated. That one, state law, then vote of the people, and then the restaurant tax. That one's very, very complicated. So I don't like that idea either. Another thing I wanted to bring up is this, and this could bring in a few more, well, about $4 million more a year. But this is something that I did not vote for when I was on the city council. They passed a tobacco occupation tax, and that was to help the Med Center with their cancer center. And what the city of Omaha had, they promised, is that they would give the Med Center $3.5 million a year for 10 years. That started in 2013. It'll sunset in 2023. If we would take out that sunset that's in that occupation tax in 2023 and just take it out, then that would be about $4 million more a year, and it wouldn't be considered a new tax. It's one that's already there. That would bring about $4 million a year. That's good money, but it still doesn't close that gap. And then another funding option that I think we all need to continue to look at is working with the state. They've talked about it for years and years and years on the sales tax exemptions on the state level. Of course, that would take legislative changes. That's out of our control and my control. But as you know, there are a number of sales tax exemptions in the state of Nebraska. In fact, it's about $4 billion worth of sales tax exemptions. And if they even reduced some or took some away, it could bring in a lot more revenue into the state, and we wouldn't have to raise anybody's taxes. In fact, we could probably lower taxes significantly. Examples that they have looked at in the recent year is adding a sales tax to candy, soda, haircuts, manicures, other things like that, but that's all on a state level, and that's out of our control. So the exact dollar that would bring in would depend on what exemption package that they would look at. So that's also a long shot. So if we had no action or no alternative was taken, and that's a possibility, because like I said, I really want to get public input, and if people say absolutely no, I don't want to pay $70 or $20 or anything more a year to get on this continuous pavement maintenance program, that may be your decision, but I want to just let you know that we will continue to prioritize the street budget like we have been. And every time we can put more and more money in our annual budget, that we will. But I will tell you that the improvements still will not keep pace with the deterioration of our roads. And you're going to see more and more like what we saw last spring with what happened. And we will fall further and further behind that funding gap that we need to do to keep up with what our road infrastructure needs. So our next steps is to solicit a lot of public feedback. We want to establish a lot of ways in the near future for you to ask further questions and give us feedback. We're going to do a lot of social media, a lot of surveys. We're really going to try to get people's input on what we think people would like to see in the city of Omaha. The bottom line is we want to create an action plan for a sustainable road maintenance and rehabilitation program. That's what we really need to do so that we quit chasing our tails every year with pothole repair, and then look what happens the next winter, they all pop out again. You know, you will see some of the pothole repairs we've done with asphalt, they're popping out in a heavy rainstorm. They just do that. We have a lot of old county roads, like another road I drive on all the time that I probably call Austin about once a week, is way out on Pacific, like 172nd and Pacific down to probably St. Wenceslas, about 150th or so. That's an old county road. If you drive on that, it is just bump, 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 and it's just full of asphalt and pothole repair. And I can guarantee you another hard winter, they'll all pop out again. The outside experts that I talked about, besides the City of Omaha Public Works Department and the Finance Department, we've been using HDR, Lamper Nearson, Olson & Associates, and Benish to give us some information and help us analyze the roads and let us know with their expert opinion of why we are the way we are and what we need to do to get on a good pavement maintenance program so these things that we're dealing with now won't keep on happening in the future.